Raising the Bets is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to Raising the Bets. We're a Catholic couple raising 5 kids outside of Boston. Join us as we share the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, and our adventures near and far as we make sense of the world and experience the best parts of our culture. I'm Dom Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Before we get into the usual things, I have some feedback I'd like to read that came in from some listeners. Some very nice feedback in response to me talking about how my dad died recently. So the first feedback comes from Mary Jean, who writes, I'm writing to send my condolences to you all regarding Dom's father's recent passing. I was so sorry to hear of it when I put on the weekly podcast, as I do when I have a cooking session. As through the magic of podcasts, sort of like radio, Dad, I feel as though I have gotten to know your family a bit, albeit remotely. I really enjoyed hearing your stories about him, and the picture from Rome was wonderful and obviously a very happy memory. I've been praying for him, for you all, and the rest of the family, especially your mother, as you go through this tough time. May his soul and the souls of all the departed rest in peace. Amen. God bless you all. Thank you, Mary Jean. I appreciate it. I really do. There's so many nice notes from folks and prayers, which have really definitely lifted me up and the whole family. Your prayers have been very efficacious.
Definitely.
And also from Thomas, who wrote via YouTube, I'll continue to pray for you and your family, Dom. My great aunt passed away earlier this year, and the wake was actually kind of boisterous. Lots of us loud Italian Americans were in attendance. Despite the sorrow, it was good to reconnect with so many family members. I mean, that's the thing, is it was definitely a sad occasion, but it was nice to see everyone.
Yeah.
And to, there were, like, I've told you, like, there were people I literally have not seen in 3 or 4 decades that I saw. So it was really nice. It was like people I hadn't seen since we were kids. It's just wild.
It occurs to me that I've actually missed the last, I don't know how many family funerals on my side of the family.
Right.
When my grandmother died.
Right. You were here.
I was here. I couldn't go to the funeral. I just had a baby, or I was expecting a baby. And, when my uncle Paul died, I wasn't able to go either. And actually, unfortunately, this week, my Aunt Lois passed away. And I'm not going to be able to go to that one either. I probably...
Yeah. It's hard. I mean...
There is a lot of comfort in gathering with people and celebrating and remembering. And I've felt really sad not to be able to join with my family in many of those occasions.
If I were, somewhere so far away that I couldn't go to my father's, wake and funeral, I mean, it would be hard. I mean, closure is a thing, and without that, it's difficult to move on and to not feel like you're missing a thing. These occasions where we remember and get together and talk and laugh and cry and all of those things, they're important. They're an important part of life and death. So, yeah, I mean, as we become a more mobile society, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, apart from people who, up and moved across the ocean to the colony,
like your grandparents,
which wasn't 2, but it was like more like 100 years ago, almost exactly 100 years ago. You pretty much lived your whole life near the rest of your family. There was this idea of where you can move across country. Although I'm glad that you did, but that idea, it's a relatively new thing, and it's trying to, as a society, we're trying to figure out how to deal with that. But in any case, thank you all, and I really do appreciate it. And your prayers for Melanie's uncle,
and cousins,
and cousins for their loss would be appreciated as well. So this week we've been getting over sickness. We've been going through rounds of colds, not COVID, so it's just like colds, and I think allergies on top. I mean, we have fall allergies in this house. And I think
this was definitely a cold that went its way around.
but I think the allergies don't help.
Right.
And like the kids, especially you and I, knock on wood, haven't really gotten really sick. They've really been the ones who've gotten really sick. I've had like this scratch in my throat and this kind of faint earache thing, which I think might be allergies because it's been there for like a week and hasn't gotten worse. It's gotten a little better. I think it's an allergy thing.
Okay.
But in any case, the kids have been coughing and sneezing and
poor Sophie
blowing their noses.
Poor Sophie was really hit bad.
Yeah, she had some really bad coughing fits. But we're sort of on the backside of that. We had to miss the kids, Scout Court of Honor because they were all sick, and we hadn't had a Court of Honor in a year, so it was a shame.
I felt really bad especially because like Sophie was advancing in rank, and
Yep.
they all were getting different.
They're getting merit badges. And Anthony was his first Court of Honor as a scout. So yeah, it's disappointing. Hopefully we won't have to wait another year. There's supposed to be more often than that. So the other thing that this week was, today I went to visit my mom in the nursing home and took Lucy with me while the other kids were at a scout thing this afternoon, and went in to see my mom. And one of the interesting, it was a nice visit. One of the interesting things is she, basically sits and watches TV all day. And there was this program that she was watching. It was terrible. It's one of these like home and garden sort of shows, but not like on HGTV where they actually have some, at least modicum of production value. I mean, it looked fine, but the host, she was doing these voiceovers. Oh my gosh, it was so stilted, and she would stumble. Like they didn't even re-record it. Like, wow, it's like a mediocre podcast. Like it's better than that. It was really weird, and it was just like, hey, let's look at this rich people's house, and we'll pretend that I'm just coming to the door. They're opening up and say, "Oh, what a surprise!" As if the camera standing next to them, the cameraman standing next to them wasn't a clue that I was coming to the door. We didn't prearrange this. It's like, oh, it was just like, come, let's walk around our super expensive mansion. And, oh, yes, this Turkish marble floor. We had to buy every box of Turkish marble available in America in order to make this floor. But, it was worth it. I'm like, gross. It was like super overconsumption. And I'm like, oh, it's just, ugh. Anyway, my mom's sitting there watching this stuff, and she's like, what am I watching? I'm like, Mom, I don't know what you're watching. But my mom has always had this thing where she's had either Food Network or HGTV on all the time, just in the background. And she's continuing to do that in the nursing home. So I thought that was kind of weird and funny. So you were telling me this week there was a possibility for you to attend a conference and you didn't go. Tell me about it.
My friend Zena, who is a faithful listener to our podcast, so thank you, Zena, was going to the Catholic Imagination Conference which was being hosted at my alma mater, University of Dallas, and several people we know were going to be there. My friend Sally Thomas was going to be doing a presentation, and my friend Dorian Speed was doing a presentation, and lots of people I knew were attending. And yet, when Zena asked me if I wanted to go, I just felt this really bizarre sense of anxiety and dread, such that like every time I thought about going, I just felt panic. And I just eventually said, I don't think I can go. And it was really weird to me. But it turned out that the conference was actually started on the day of your dad's funeral.
Right.
So I would not have been able to go.
You would have had to cancel anyway. So
it seemed like it was maybe my guardian angel watching, like the weird sense of dread was maybe my guardian angel watching out for me and saying, no, you really shouldn't go.
But it's funny because as reported to you by several of your friends who were there, you were kind of there in spirit. Right.
Like Zena said that they were talking about me and I was, very much missed and remembered. It was weird. But my mom actually, my sister reminded me that my dad had many years ago, wanted to go on a pilgrimage to Spain, which I think it was either from via the parish or his Carmelite.
It's third order Carmelite group.
Carmelite
chapter.
Thank you, chapter. I was blanking on the name. And my mom just felt this like really bad feeling about it. And my dad, like she said, I just don't think that we should go. I feel really like anxious about this. And my dad sort of poo-pooed it, but she didn't really relent. And so eventually he gave in. Well, and it turned out that actually he ended up having a stroke during the time when the group was in Spain.
So he would have been in Spain when he had his stroke.
Yeah. Which, thank God he wasn't, because that might have been really bad.
Right.
To be overseas and like maybe further away from medical help, maybe not get treated right away like he was. Anyway, so I do really believe that sometimes we have, like, God intervenes and lets us know when things are not a good idea. Not directly, like I didn't hear a voice saying, don't do this, but I just did not feel peaceful at all with the idea of going. And I really only felt relief when I said I wasn't going to go. And then when I remembered, like, Zena was posting pictures from the conference, like, or posting pictures like of getting on the plane to go as we were at the funeral, like driving to the burial, and I was checking my messages. I saw her pictures and I thought, oh, wow, yeah, that timing would not have worked.
Right. We would have been out the airfare and on all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Wow.
I mean, possibly we could have got a bereavement, like
perhaps
rain check or something.
Yeah. But in any case, I mean, yeah, God has his reasons.
God works in mysterious ways.
He certainly does.
Yeah.
So that's what's been going on. Hopefully there's more going to be going on soon. We were talking about like getting out and doing something this week, getting out of the house. Your dad's coming to visit, which is nice. To have him here. It's been a while.
It's been since before. I think the last time he was here was fall of 2019.
The fall of the House of Scots.
The fall of 2019.
That's right. Wow.
So it's been
almost 3 years. It's been 3 years.
It's been 3 years since my dad was here last.
That's weird to think I haven't seen your dad in person.
This is the longest I've gone without seeing my dad in my life.
Yeah.
I've never gone for more than a year without seeing him. Even when I moved to Massachusetts, like either they came here or I went there to Texas.
Right.
I've never like not seen my dad for a year.
Well, it'll be nice. It'll be nice to have him here. Imagine when he sees these kids, how they have grown.
He's going to be shocked at how big they are.
Yep. Cool. Good. Yeah. Actually, I was looking today and I was at some things I'd made some notes of places I want to go visit. And some of these notes go back to pre-COVID. Some like hikes that look really cool. And there's I want to go to the submarine museum in Groton, Connecticut, where they have the USS Nautilus, which was the first nuclear submarine, the U.S. nuclear submarine, and so on. So I want to get out and see things again.
I want to go to the beach.
Yes, we go back to the beach like we did a year ago. The beach in the fall is really nice.
It is. I mean, you can't go swimming, but it's just really nice to walk on the beach.
Yeah, exactly.
At this time of year.
Yeah. Let's talk about food. Let's talk about some things we've eaten. We've cooked. So one of the first things I made last week was actually, I don't know how to pronounce it. Mochitlan style beef stew with red chilies and chickpeas. And
that sounded good to me. I don't know if it's right, but
yeah, Mochitlan. Yeah, who knows? So it's an Instant Pot recipe, and I made the classic Instant Pot mistake, which is I added up all the cooking times, and I forget there's the times for the pot getting up to temp into steam pressure. That's what I mean, and then the cool down time, and so.
It adds quite a bit of time, especially if you're doing the thing where you do a part of the thing and then you put something else in the Instant Pot and then you bring it up to temperature and cook for another period of time.
And I mean, to tell the end of the story first, we ate like at 8:30 or something.
It was really late. All the kids were like,
they were starving.
We're hungry. It smells good. Where's the food?
So it starts with guajillo chilies, which are a dried chili, and you rehydrate them in the pot. So you put them in the pot. You add some water. You bring it to a boil, like on saute, and then you let it sit for a bit. Then you use a spoon. You take them out. And you're supposed to put them in a blender along with some of the liquid and some water, salt, and pepper. And you blend it up. And then you add onion, garlic, cumin, oregano, and cloves. And you blend that until it's smooth. And then so you have this puree, this pepper onion puree. And then you put that in to the pot. And you add in some beef. In this case, it was chuck roast, I think it was, cut into chunks, and chickpeas. And then you pressure cook it for 30 minutes. And then you once it's done, you add zucchini. And I also added carrots and mushrooms.
And potatoes?
Bell pepper, not potatoes.
Not potatoes. Would have been good with potatoes.
Yeah. And then you bring it back up to a boil. So the only time it's pressure cooking is with the meat. So you bring it up to a boil until the zucchini is tender. And then add lime juice and serve. So I made a mistake where I forgot to put the chilies into the blender. I put the liquid, but not the chilies. And so I ended up putting the chilies in later and not getting them blended enough. So you had these little, like chilies, like pepper skins all throughout. And it was really kind of, ugh. The other thing is it was too spicy for pretty much everybody, except for me. It
was okay for me, but probably I think Sophie was fine with it.
Yeah, but
Sophie didn't eat a lot because she doesn't really love stews and soups.
Right. So if I were to make it again, I would heat up the chilies. I mean, I would rehydrate them and use only the water to add the flavor without all the spice. I think that would cut most of the spiciness out.
Maybe.
But regardless,
I suspect that the people who don't like spice would just not like the flavor either.
Well, I don't want to make bland food all the time. That's the thing that gets me. It's like I keep looking at these recipes going, I would like to make that, but I'm going to get pushback from 3 of the 4 children who will, I don't want to eat that. And I'm tired of eating mac and cheese instead of whatever you're making. So I thought it was good. I liked it. I think I might have been alone in that. Like, I think other people thought it was okay. You thought it was okay?
It was okay. It wasn't one of my favorites.
I mean, I finished the leftovers today for lunch, and they were pretty good. So I like it. I like beef stew though. So and I like chickpeas.
See, I think I like stew. Like I like classic beef stew, but I don't really like. For me, it's sort of one of those comfort foods where I kind of like the thing itself. I don't like variations on it.
Okay.
Like with comfort foods, what's comforting about them is that they take you...
Is the familiarity.
Right. So a sort of variation on a beef stew doesn't have that comfort level for me. And I don't love beef stew enough to want like non-familiar.
I guess I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I don't know that makes sense. But.
Yeah. I mean, beef stew for me is not so much a comfort food. I just like beef stew. That's, a kind of food that I like. So it's not the same thing for me. Another thing I made, it's not really a new thing, although it was a new recipe, was hot and sour soup. So the Cooks Illustrated, they have this series on their YouTube channel called Hunger Pangs. And it's this father and son, Jeffrey and Jonathan Pang, I think. And the dad is from Hong Kong, and the son is from here. I think he was born here. And they pair up and do recipes, and they do like Chinese recipes, and they kind of taking the mystery out of Chinese cooking and showing how you can make it at home. And so they did a hot and sour soup recipe, and I love hot and sour soup. It's one of my favorite things. In fact, I use it as a way to gauge the quality of Chinese restaurants. Any Chinese restaurant I go to, I'll order a hot and sour soup, and if the hot and sour soup is good, I can pretty much guess that the rest of the food will be good. And if it's blech, I'm not going to like the rest of the food. It's going to be trash. That has been one of the most reliable indicators for me forever for the quality of Chinese restaurant. So I really like hot and sour soup. So I made it, and there wasn't anything too exotic in it. The most exotic thing that most people might not have in their kitchen pantry is Chinese black vinegar. But it's, tofu, soy sauce, sesame oil, cornstarch. You get a pork loin chop that you cut into matchsticks, an egg, chicken broth, bamboo shoots, shiitake mushrooms. They call for fresh ones. I used dehydrated ones that I rehydrated, and that worked out. Chili oil, ground white pepper, and scallions. Now, in the end, I think we both agreed it was a little bland.
Yeah.
Which hot and sour soup should not be bland. And I thought it might be not enough salt, but you said it was something different.
I wanted more vinegar.
Yeah.
I thought it needed some white vinegar, but then again, I really prefer white vinegar in my hot sour soup to the black vinegar.
Well,
you claim that it's because the black vinegar that we have is old.
It's very old.
I just think that I prefer white vinegar to black vinegar.
Well, so when I reheated some and I added the white vinegar, it was much better.
See?
Yeah. So this recipe really needs some white vinegar. Although the black vinegar we have is very old. It is older than our marriage. I got it in Dallas when I went down there, that one of the first times when we were dating. Like maybe the first time when we were dating, when we went to Dallas that time. I don't know what, like, there weren't any Asian grocery stores near in Salem, I guess. And we went into an Asian grocery store at the time. Oh no. This was when you were pregnant.
I was pregnant because I remember like having to leave the store.
Right.
Because the smell of,
I just remember that.
The smells of, like, they had fish, like, it was very fishy.
Yeah.
And actually it smelled like somebody had dropped a bottle of fish sauce at some very recent point because it was incredibly fishy. I had to leave.
Right.
I was so sick.
Yeah. So it's not quite as old as our marriage, but it's older than our oldest child.
It's more than 16 years old.
Yes. So it's time to replace it. So I actually ordered some from Amazon because, you can do that now.
I still maintain I prefer white vinegar.
No, I'll still add white vinegar. That's for sure. I think it's. The thing
is, I used to make hot and sour soup for myself when I was like in high school. It's like just like an after school treat. But I made like the gringo white girl from Texas version. And that's actually what I like. I don't really like a lot of the hot sour soup I have in restaurants, especially I don't know why. But the hot and sour soup I remember having in restaurants as a kid in Texas, I like better than any hot and sour soup I've ever had in a Chinese restaurant in Massachusetts.
Okay.
I don't know why. There's something about Massachusetts Chinese restaurants that...
Oh, they're different.
They're very different. And I just don't really like Chinese food around here. I liked Chinese food. Like, we used to go out for Chinese all the time when I was growing up. My parents had this one restaurant that we went to regularly. It was down the street from our house, and we went all the time. I remember going there for my birthday, and I liked it. And I've had many of the same dishes that I remember liking at restaurants here, and I've never found one that I actually really liked very much. I'll tolerate it, but it's just not really good.
I am restraining myself right now.
I know.
Because this is like... These are war words.
This is one of the things,
like Chinese, like Massachusetts Chinese food versus Texas Chinese food. Them some fighting words there.
I'm just saying that like my tastes were in Chinese food were shaped in a particular environment.
Okay.
And something about the way it's cooked here is different. I wouldn't be able to put my finger on what it is or why.
I wonder if it's just different immigrant communities, people from different parts of China.
Different parts of China.
Like if we get more Szechuan or Cantonese Chinese here in New England, and you get more, I don't know what the other areas would be, in there. And even though they make the variety of dishes from around around the country, they make them a little differently.
The specific ingredients that they use or the techniques are a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so the flavors are different.
Right.
But I really think that there's something different. Like I've been open to trying Chinese food from many places around here. And I've just kind of got to the point where I no longer try anymore because I'm tired of being disappointed. Which,
yeah,
but I have been game.
Ironically, that's what you said to me when I first asked you out. I'm just kidding. I'm tired of being disappointed.
But I do wonder if like there's some sort of difference in where immigrants in Texas versus immigrants in Massachusetts are coming from in China or something. Or maybe just adapting to local ingredients. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
there's something different.
Then there was the time I went to the Chinese restaurant in Steubenville in Ohio. And there was not a single Asian person to be seen. And you could tell that the food was not being made by people who ever been to China or even close to China. It was not good. It was not good.
I did have Chinese food in Florence, though, that was really good.
Florence. I had Chinese food in Paris, which was okay. That was pretty interesting.
The thing that threw me off, though, was that white rice did not come automatically with, like, you had to order it separately.
Yeah.
A la carte. And that surprised me because I had never been to a Chinese restaurant where white rice didn't just automatically come with the entree.
Yeah, that's not even here. They don't even do that. You have to order rice separately. You have to order rice.
Every restaurant I had ever been to before that.
Of course, in the Boston area, it's not as much true as it used to be, but you would get rolls with your meal. Like
dinner rolls?
Like dinner rolls. It was a thing. You just like dinner rolls where if you got takeout, there were dinner rolls in the bag.
That's weird.
It's very weird.
Boston Chinese food.
Weird as heck, you guys. It's weird. I know. I get it. It's weird. But yeah. Although it's interesting, after the West Coast, I get there was a podcast story that I heard about like how Chinese food came to America, and it came through Hawaii via World War II. Like after World War II, a lot of soldiers brought it back with them.
Well, maybe to this part of America, but there were Chinese restaurants like in San Francisco and California.
No. So what we know of as Chinese food today, there were Chinese, quote unquote, Chinese restaurants beforehand, but they sold like chop suey and like it was very limited. Like there were, of course, Chinese restaurants that catered to Chinese people, but the sort of Chinese restaurants that non-Chinese people went to were very different. Just like Italian restaurants prior to about 1975 or 1980 were spaghetti and red sauce and meatballs. There was no, because, like The Big Night, the movie The Big Night. And he's like trying to get the woman to get risotto. And she's like, I don't want risotto. I just want some lasagna, Or the
one woman who orders the risotto with pasta, and he's just affronted that you would like eat both risotto and pasta in the same meal. Like,
I love that movie.
He's just like, who's ordering the risotto? I remember there's a scene where he's like, who's ordering the risotto? Who is it? And he's like, if it's the woman who's ordering the pasta, she is not allowed to have the risotto. Like, he gets very angry.
And the brother who's running the front of the house is like, just give her what she wants.
You give the customer what they want.
Oh, man. That is such a great movie.
It is. I love that movie.
I want to do it for the Secrets of Movies and TV Shows, but I can't get anyone to do it with me.
I'll do it with you.
We should just, there's a couple of shows, movies that you and I should just do.
The best scene is the one near the end.
The omelet.
Where he makes the omelet.
What I've actually saw an interview with him.
Stanley
Tucci. I keep wanting Andrew Garcia because they're like twins sometimes. Stanley Tucci, and talking about, in fact, I think it was on the Milk Street Kitchen podcast, talking about having to make the eggs and do it all in one take. It's all one take.
One long take where the camera wanders around the kitchen, but it's perfect.
Masterful.
And he makes the omelet, they eat it, and it's just beautiful.
Right. And I don't think there's even hardly any lines in it.
No, nobody talks.
There's no talking. It's just him making the omelet with her. Yeah. After the big night. And the timpano. Man. Yeah. That's so fantastic. Yeah. Great movie. Let's put it on the schedule. We're going to do that and 50 First Dates. We need to do both of those.
Oh, yeah.
So, where were we? Oh, hot sour soup. Anyway, next time I make it, I'm gonna add white vinegar. I'm actually just put a note in. I'm gonna add. So the original recipe says 5 tablespoons of Chinese black vinegar. I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. And if that's not enough, I'll taste it. If that's not enough, I'll add even more because it does have to have that sharpness.
Yep.
It's got to have that hot. The sour is in that vinegar. That's got to. Yeah, that's true. All right. Tonight for dinner, we had chicken souvlaki, which is a Greek.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this it came out pretty good. It's a grilled skewered dish, and I'm just pulling it up here, and it's not showing up. So why? Oh, I typed Greek souvlaki, this is what happens when you talk and type at the same time. So it's just chicken breast, slice it into strips.
First you brine it.
Well, yes. First you brine. It's not in the recipe, but you should brine your.
No, it was in the recipe.
Okay, I'm
looking at a different recipe than I looked at because I was following a recipe that told me to brine it.
So there are 2 different recipes in our recipe manager. There's the Cook's Country and the Cook's Illustrated, which is kind of ironic. So you must have followed the Cook's Illustrated.
I opened both of them and looked at both of them, and then did the best out of both worlds.
Well, there you go. So so the Cook's Illustrated version has you brine it, which is a good idea. And then
you get much more moist, flavorful chicken that way.
Definitely. So then you have oil, parsley, lemon zest and juice, honey, oregano, and pepper.
I added some coriander and cumin because that just felt like it needed to be in there.
Okay. And did you use a combination of the Mexican and Greek oregano?
I think I did that for the potatoes, or maybe I did it for the chicken. I don't remember because I also did Greek potatoes, and I don't remember which one I used, the Mexican oregano,
which are apparently different because they look different and they taste different.
The Mexican oregano looked like it had the whole flowers in them, and
it had buds
as well as the leaves. Yeah.
And it's got a more citrusy flavor to it. It's actually pretty good. I like it. So then you reserve some of the oil based mixture on one, for later. Then you take the rest of it and you mix the brined chicken with it, and you just mix it with it. It doesn't have to sit in it for very long. Excuse me.
Right. It's not a marinade. It's more like
it's not a marinade. It's because it's thick enough. It'll stick to it. Then you skewer it up on the skewers, and like in an S shape. So like the long ways, so it folds over, which kind of concentrates it on the skewer. So that way it doesn't some of it gets the char marks, but it doesn't get burnt all over. I think that I like that better.
I did too.
And it cooks better than having big chunks. So then I also skewered up red bell pepper, some mushrooms, and a red onion. And I always do meat and vegetable on separate skewers. I know, like the pretty thing you see in the magazines is, a piece of onion and a bell pepper and a mushroom and a piece of meat and then a piece of onion. Those things don't cook at the same rate. By the time the meat's done, that mushroom is shriveled to nothing. It's a piece of leather. So I always cook them separately, the vegetables separately from the meat, and grilled them up. I kind of burned some of the pieces of meat. They were a little heavy charred.
I bet, yeah.
I don't mind it because underneath the char is some nice tasty meat, but some of the kids, they dislike it. But luckily, it wasn't all that way, just a few pieces. And then once it comes off the grill, and I take it off the skewer, and then you mix it with the rest of the reserved marinade, or the reserved sauce, I guess what it is. And I threw it right in hot. And I think that's good because that heat kind of activates the essential oils in the lemon. So I think it made it even tastier, I think, by throwing it in hot and mixing it with it. And then you made tzatziki, which is the cucumber yogurt sauce. I made a different sauce that was recommended, which was a tahini butter sauce. Tahini is the sesame seed paste, which is almost like peanut butter, but it's sesame butter.
Sesame seed butter.
It's basically sesame seed butter. And it's what's in hummus. They mix that with, the tahini and chickpeas, that sort of thing. So tahini, lemon juice, salt, pepper, oregano, and butter. And you don't like tahini. Melanie doesn't like tahini.
I'm not a fan.
But
hummus is okay because of the
chickpeas.
Yeah, the chickpeas kind of hide the tahini.
And you like sesame seeds and everything else.
I know, but somehow when you make them into sesame seed butter, it intensifies the bitter flavor for me.
Plus, a lot of the tahini is probably kind of a little old and a little bit rancid.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, that tahini's been in their fridge forever. It doesn't bother me, but I can see that. So, but I really liked it. It was really good. And so we got some naan, and we just put the meat in the naan with the.
Yeah, we didn't have pita. I find most of the pitas around here are like not as fluffy. They're more like
they're Lebanese pitas.
They're more like tortillas than the fluffy pitas that I prefer.
Yeah, I think a lot of the pita around here is so. Pita, which we used to call Syrian bread when I was a kid.
Which tells you a lot about the immigrant community around here.
Yes. But it was actually Lebanese bakeries that sold them. There were a lot of Lebanese folks in the Boston area. And so we've had that long before it was a fad, like pita pockets and all that sort of stuff in the 80s. We had pita bread long before that. And so the pita is the traditional to, I think, parts of Lebanon, as opposed to what you see now, which is fluffier and.
Well, yeah, because whenever I had pita in Austin, we had Greek restaurants. So right. I'm used to Greek pita, which is fluffier than Lebanese pita. Like Greek pita is in texture, it's a little bit closer to naan than it is to this.
Right, because when you get a gyro, that's a fluffy flatbread.
Right. Although around here, the gyros are often on
just on pita bread.
Pita, like
the flat pitas,
like the thin. I'm like, what the heck is this gyro? There's not the.
And let me to be honest, a lot of the pita that you buy around here now is kind of dry, and tasteless.
It's not good.
It's not like when I was a kid. I mean, because we used to get it from the real, the Lebanese bakeries and stuff, along with some amazing other Lebanese. Like there was like a pizza thing. It was like on a round, and it would have feta cheese and other stuff on it. Oh, so good. There was a lady that my parents were in business with. Long story. They had a shop. But she kind of introduced us. She was Lebanese, and she introduced us to a bunch of that stuff. Anyway, back to this. We're going on and on. The tahini butter sauce, I really liked. I would recommend that one. So there's two recipes, either in Cook's Country or in Cook's Illustrated, for the souvlaki, and so both they're very similar. So brining, though, I would say make sure you brine. Okay, that's the food. Moving on. Let's talk about what we've been reading and watching. I watched The Village, M. Night Shyamalan's movie The Village from 2004.
Which we originally saw together, didn't we? In the theater?
2004? Were we together?
No, maybe not.
I mean, we might have seen it in like a friend group, like because we were in a group of friends at the time.
No, maybe not. Maybe we didn't.
We saw the Passion of the Christ together.
We saw Lady in the Water.
We saw Lady in the Water together. Okay,
that's the one, the Shyamalan we saw in the theater.
Let's talk about Shyamalan in his evolution. So we start with he had an earlier movie which I never saw, but the movie that really he got noticed for was Sixth Sense,
his best one.
Yeah. Then Signs, which was really good.
Signs was good, not quite as good as Sixth Sense, but it was good.
Sixth Sense was all about the twist. Like it was all about the twist. People were going nuts over that movie because of the twist. I remember, like, you got to see this before you get the twist. You get spoiled before the big reveal. Someone tells you what happens, because if you know what's happening going into it, it doesn't have the same impact. Which I'm still not spoiling, by the way, just in case some of you out there have not seen it. You should go see it. There's a twist. There's a big thing.
I think it's still a good movie, even when.
Well, and that's the thing, is I want to go back and watch it again, having known it.
I've seen it a few times.
So then he had Signs, and then The Village. And The Village has a great cast. I forgot how good the cast is in that.
Mm-hmm.
William Hurt, Sigourney Weaver, Joaquin Phoenix, Bryce Dallas Howard in her first movie role.
Yeah, that was her first film.
She was phenomenal in it. She was really good. Adrian Brody, Gleason.
Brendan
Gleason. I was going to say Bernard Gleason. Brendan Gleason. Oh, Cherry Jones. She's the narrator for the Little House books.
Oh,
she was in it. She was also in Signs as the sheriff, by the way. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember that.
Shyamalan likes to recycle his.
Yeah, he uses the same actors again and again.
Another movie that was in the good era, by the way, was Unbreakable.
Unbreakable was really good.
Really good. Then he did Lady in the Water, and
that was okay.
It was okay, great. And it was the beginning of of him going into the bad era. You know, the era that includes movies like The Happening.
I never saw it.
One of the worst movies. Like it was a huge disappointment. The trees were mad at us. I'm going to spoil it because you shouldn't see it. It's a bad movie. The trees were mad at us and made people kill themselves.
Oh wait, I think I did see that.
Yeah, we watched it. It had Mark Wahlberg in it.
Did it?
Yeah, and he's like confused the whole time. I think because he's like, why am I in this terrible movie? You know, he's got that Mark Wahlberg confused face a lot of the time.
But doesn't he always have the Mark Wahlberg?
Well, yes, but he was like, I think he wasn't just acting. I think he was like, why am I in this terrible movie? Who convinced me of this? I mean, worse than Ted. So, which was funny, but in a really terrible, crass way that you shouldn't laugh at.
Never saw it.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then apparently the last couple movies he's made, Split and Glass, have been pretty good.
I haven't heard anything about them.
Yeah, well, we're back to, we don't want to know too much because of spoilers, but it's connected to earlier movies. They're both connected to his earlier movies.
Interesting.
Well, one of his earlier movies. But I never bothered to see them because I was so disappointed with happening. So I want to go back and see it. But we did watch The Village, and yeah, it holds up. And that the thing we had talked about before I watched it again was knowing now the gimmick, the twist. Is it still worthwhile? How is it watching it when you know the whole story? And it was really good. It still worked. And in fact, there are huge themes of human nature, the nature of sin, the nature of evil and good, the desire to run away from the world and run away from sorrow, how we find joy. I mean, there's some real big themes in that. We had a great discussion, Mike Creevy and Mike Denz and I, and you'll be able to hear that later this month, sometime before Halloween. We're doing it as a Halloween thing. But we decided that we want to, probably in the new year, we'll come back and do Sixth Sense and Signs, and maybe Unbreakable too. Because Signs has got a lot of faith-based themes in it, obviously.
Oh, yeah. I had the feeling that The Village would be watchable again because it did deal with bigger themes. It wasn't just about like
the twist or the gimmick. Yeah. So
I like movies that like are different the second time you see them when you know what's going to happen,
right? But
are still good, but like in a different way. Like
the best Shyamalan movies are the ones where at the end, when you have all the information now, you go back and go, oh my gosh, no way. That reads completely different now that I know that. And then you want to
go back and watch it over again.
Yes.
Like I think Sixth Sense, like I watched it in the theater and then went back like the next week to watch it again.
Right. There was a lot of people doing that, I think. Because I got to see that now. Where are all the clues? Oh, that was a clue. Oh, that was a clue. There was a lot of that. And he he was the first one to really do that big twisty thing. It was good. So The Village is good. So you've been reading and watching some stuff.
What should I start with, watching or reading?
Watching.
Okay. A friend of mine had recommended... Speaking of twisty, a friend of mine had recommended the Netflix series Russian Doll. But with the warning that it had really crass language and...
adult situations.
Violence and, promiscuity. And so if any of that sort of thing bothers you, this is definitely not the show for you. It goes places you might not want to go.
Right.
That said... it's a really interesting story. And I feel like I can't say much about it without spoiling it. Like my sister said, two of her friends wanted to watch it, and she had seen the trailers and said, I have no interest in this show at all because they didn't give away like what the twist was, which happens really quickly, really early in the first episode. But it's really a story about redemption. The closest movie I can think of that it reminds me of actually is Groundhog Day, but it's not Groundhog Day.
Right.
But it's similar, like the way Bill Murray's character moves from selfishness to a generosity of spirit.
Yeah.
So the character in this starts off as being a person, like I spent the first 20 minutes thinking, if the friend who hadn't recommended this hadn't been somebody whose recommendations I trust, I would turn this off because I do not enjoy this character at all. I don't like this situation. And where is this going and why would I care? Like I really spent the first like solid 15, 20 minutes going, ew. But then it gets better, and then it gets really better, and then it gets a lot better, and then it really, really gets better. So if you're somebody who doesn't mind bothersome things, but is into for good stories about, character driven stories, it was good.
But it has some weird supernaturally sort of.
Yeah, there's weird stuff.
Yeah.
I like weird stuff. And it's good non-linear storytelling. Like,
yeah.
One of the things that I've discovered I really like in movies and TV shows is things that don't tell the story. Like, here's the beginning and here's the middle and here's the end, that like scramble up the time, the story, and like it unfolds gradually over time as you get more and more details, but it's not told like everything in order.
Right.
So that's what I like is.
Okay. Then, so that's Russian Doll on Netflix.
Right. Speaking of Russian.
Yes.
My book of the week was A Gentleman in Moscow. Which Russian Doll is, well, the main character is, her dad was Russian Jewish and her mom was Hungarian Jewish. So she's sort of Russian, in ancestry.
Okay.
No, not her dad, her grandparents. Right. Her mom's parents. Anyway, Gentleman in Moscow, it gives away, like, the premise is like in the first page. Basically, the main character is a Russian count who had been in exile at the time of the Bolshevik Revolution and came back to Russia when the Bolsheviks took over. But after about 4 years into the revolution, they arrest him and put him on trial because he's, well, aristocracy.
Mm-hmm.
But he had published a poem, which was sort of before his exile. He had published a poem which was sort of seen as being proto-revolutionary, like before the revolution, in favor of the kinds of things that the revolution was in favor of. So because of this poem that they feel is like in favor of their cause, they can't quite bring themselves to kill him, the three guys who are his judges. And so they send him back to the Hotel Metropole, which is where he's been living for the last 4 years. He's got like a suite all decked out with things he's rescued from his family's house when he got his grandmother out of the country at the time of the revolution. He's been living in the Metropole Hotel, and they say, you can go back. We're not going to shoot you. But if you set foot out of the hotel, we will shoot you. So now the Metropole Hotel in Moscow has become his prison.
Okay.
So it's sort of a gilded cage.
Right.
It is very comfortable, although they kick him out, the Bolsheviks kick him out of his suite and send him to a little attic room, and he's allowed to take whatever furniture and possessions can fit in this little teeny tiny 10 by 10 attic room.
Okay.
So he's able to reclaim some of his possessions, and he's not completely destitute. He has a cache of money stored away, but he's living in this hotel, and it's a story about sort of his internal journey, like what makes life worth living when it's so constrained. He's not being tortured. He's not like in a cell. He has a lot of luxuries. He eats in like these fancy restaurants every night. He gets his hair cut every week, like on the same time, the same, in the hotel barbershop. He's comfortable.
But he's not free.
But he's not free. And so then there's this internal journey that he goes on. And then there's the people he meets, both the people who work in the hotel and the people who are frequent guests who come back. And then there's a little girl whose father is staying in the hotel, and he becomes friends with her, which was really interesting. She was an interesting character. And she's kind of a prisoner too, because her dad's an ambassador and is living in the hotel, and her governess does not trust big cities and so doesn't let her go outside and won't take her out. So she's basically explored the hotel from top to bottom and knows all of its secrets.
Okay.
Which the Count, having lived there for 4 years, he thinks he already knows the hotel as well as anyone can, and it turns out he doesn't. There's a lot of really great characters, and there's a lot of good character moments, and a lot of musings about, human nature and the nature of, because the Count is an aristocrat, he has this appreciation for things like fine wine, good cuisine.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but as the Bolsheviks do not have like an appreciation for these things completely, and yet they don't completely get rid of them either. But there's like the scarcity, like the cook having to make do with what he has, as opposed to like being able to get anything that he wants.
Right.
And so there's these privations that happen, but also he is somebody who appreciates art and music and literature, and how that kind of shapes his person, and whether those things are props which help you in adversity versus things that kind of pull you down, and then the conflicts with the people who don't appreciate the finer things in life. It was a good book. I liked it a lot. I was reading it with the Circe Institute's Close Reads podcast. They pick a novel and then read it, and then there's a podcast so that's kind of fun, because they also have a Facebook page where people talk, and so there's a little bit of diving deeper into some of the themes with a community of readers, which I always appreciate. I've
always wanted to do a book podcast on StarQuest, but this is as close as we got with us talking about the books we like to read. I'm always trying to figure out how to do it well.
There's a lot of work that goes into just like talking about a book off the cuff like this is different from like doing a podcast about books.
Right. About a book, or how would we do it? What would be the best way to do it? It would be, read a chapter a week, and then discuss those chapters, or, do a book at a time. I don't know. That's really would be, I don't know what the best way to do it would be, but anyway. And then you had one other one?
Oh, yeah. So I also started, after I finished Gentleman in Moscow, I started Works of Mercy by Sally Thomas, who is a friend. I've known her online for a long time.
The one you mentioned earlier that was at the Catholic Imagination Conference.
So Sally's a poet. She's published several books of poetry, and this is her first work of fiction, for her first novel. And it's really good. It's very much a Catholic novel in that the main character is Catholic. She's the cleaning lady who cleans the rectory every week. And she's a widow, and she lives by herself, and she's kind of disconnected from the community. And so it's very much about her journey. Both we dig into her past and how she got to where she is. Interestingly enough, she was born in the Shetland Islands.
Mm-hmm.
And she's living in one of the Carolinas. I always forget North versus South. Sorry. I think it's North Carolina, but don't shoot me if I'm wrong. So how she got to this small town in we'll call it North Carolina. And it's kind of a slow paced novel, but beautiful. And I feel like the main character, Kirsty, is just a kindred spirit. She was a literature major before she dropped out of college. And it's really fun. It's got some funny moments and a lot about like the interior life of your local Catholic parish.
Mm.
Like there's the, kind of quirky handyman guy who
every parish has one.
Every parish has one. And there's the mom of the big family who I don't think we've ever actually figured out how many kids she has. And anytime she's asked, she just kind of laughs. Probably I could go through the book and like count up all the names and keep a tally.
Right.
But so far, I'm not sure how many kids she has. And the bishop shows up at one point and doesn't remember our protagonist. Anyway, it's really good. I'm looking forward to finishing it. And so far,
good. So that's what we've been reading and watching. We would love to hear what you've been enjoying and reading and watching. So you can let us know. You can at bets@sqpn.com. Let's round things out with a discussion of this week's gospel. And that was so the readings this week. I'm
all about lepers.
All about lepers.
We had Naaman the Syrian and the leper with Elisha the prophet for our first reading, and then Jesus curing the 10 lepers in the gospel.
Right. Thank you. And so this week we had Father Matt, our pastor. We haven't seen him in ages, partly because we've been either sick or away, but he has to
months and months.
Yeah, he also has to rotate through 3 parishes, and so if the schedules just have to align in such a way that we're at the same mass, so it's always great to see him, and he's always got great homilies. Today was no exception. Although I do have to point out he's grown a beard, and with his beard, he's like a spitting image of Ron Swanson. From
if you say so, I don't.
Parks and Rec, Nick Offerman. Oh yeah,
I don't see.
He's rocking that. So. So he started with the 2 stories about Pope St. John the 23rd that illustrate his humility.
Those were great stories.
So he says the Pope John used to go to one of the local hospitals late at night, unobserved, to pray with the sick, especially babies, like the in the neonates, that whole area. And the particular hospital he would go to was run by this order of nuns whose have this long Latin name that ends in Holy Spirit. And so everyone just called them the Holy Spirit Sisters. And this new Mother Superior had been elected. And, the first night that he was there after her election, she was all very like, when she was told, she was like, oh my goodness, the Pope is here in my hospital. I have to go find him. And so she's like running around the hospital, trying to find him, and literally runs into him, like literally.
I didn't remember that she was newly elected.
Yeah, well, let's say she was.
Okay.
So it makes the story better.
Okay,
so,
if you say so.
So she literally runs into him, and she's so flustered, and she says, Your Holiness, I'm the superior of the Holy Spirit. And he looks at her and says, well, that's impressive. I'm only the Pope. So that was a good one. And then there was another story where every day he would get these stacks of intentions to pray for. And he would have this big folder full of intentions, for the church, throughout the church, all that sort of thing. And he would go through this folder every night.
His secretary would put them on his kneeler.
Yes, on his kneeler.
Where he would pray.
And he would go through them every night. And then when he'd get to the end, he'd say, well, Lord, this is your church. I'm going to bed.
Actually, I think Father Matt made a point. He didn't read them all. He would read some of them and then
right.
kind of stop and say, well, you can handle the rest.
Yeah, you can take care of the rest. This is your church. I'm going to bed. And the point was about humility, like the humility of the Holy Father in these cases, where humility is, and I've said this before on the podcast, humility is not just, and Father Matt said it too, is not just, oh, no, I'm not important. Oh, no, I don't deserve anything. Oh, no.
It's not just self-abasement.
Yeah, it's not, that's false humility. Real humility is knowing your place and taking it, understanding your relationship with God and with other people. Right. And so he connected it to the gospel by talking about, like, we're all lepers through sin. We're all, spiritual lepers, and we're all seeking healing. And the one Samaritan who came back to Jesus was humble enough to realize, I need to go thank the person for whom this came. And so humility is, Father Matt said, gives us freedom to realize who and what we are. to think about that. Like arrogance tells us, is all about who I think I want to be, who I should be to you, and ignoring the parts of me that I don't want to tell you about. But humility is just, I am who I am. By the way, he tells a story about a friend of his meeting this guy in retreat who went to Harvard, and he knew that because the guy kept telling him over and over again how he went to Harvard,
telling everybody he went to Harvard,
and at first it's like, oh, this guy's so arrogant, he just won't stop talking about his education and until finally the guy confessed to his friend.
No, there was a point where at the retreat where everybody was talking about like their personal things that they were struggling with.
Sure. And he said he struggles with arrogance, about pride in his education. And from that moment on, he liked this guy because now he understood this guy was humble enough to admit it. Which it reminds me of the funny stories. Like, how do you know someone went to Harvard? They'll tell you. It's like, yep, I've known people who went to Harvard. So it is, humility is the basis for every grace and virtue. It is fertile ground for all that is good. And which is interesting to say fertile ground, because humility literally comes from the root word for dirt. Like humility is about being not like dirt, like bad, but humble, like the base, the foundation, fertile ground.
Well, interestingly enough, one of the things that Naaman the Syrian does after he's cured by going into the Jordan River is he asks for a couple barrel carts full of dirt so that he can worship the God of Israel when he returns to his home.
Right.
Which I thought was a really interesting point, because like in the ancient world, gods were thought to be gods of particular places. So like the idea that you could worship the God of Israel, like
I need some of Israel
in order to worship the God of Israel, because he's the God of Israel, of the place. Like gods were gods of particular places. And so the idea that you could worship a God of this place when you're in another place, well, you wouldn't do that because you want to propitiate the God of that place.
Right. He says there's no God in all the earth except in Israel. Right. That's what he's saying. So yes, now I need to take some of that Israel with me so that the God would be there.
Mm-hmm. But so what does this conquering general bring back from Israel?
Yeah.
Literally
a couple cartloads of dirt. Two mule loads, it says.
Yeah,
so
I like that.
Yes. So humility is accepting God's love and giving it back. It puts us in right relationship with God. And he talked about the humility of Naaman. I thought that was good. Like Naaman, the part of the story that takes place before the reading that was today's gospel was how he has leprosy. He's this general in this other land, and
they're invading the invasion.
Right, they're an invasion force. And there's he's got a Jewish slave girl, a little girl, who tells him he can't find anyone to cure him of his leprosy, and she says, "Well, Elisha can cure you. He's a holy man, a prophet from my country." And he listens to her. He doesn't say, "Oh, what are you, little kid, slave girl? Don't talk to me." He listens to her, and he doesn't go with an invading army. He goes just him and some servants
humbly
to the king and asks, "Where can I find Elisha? Because I want to be healed." And the king, kind of stupidly, because this general can come back and invade.
Well, I think the king is worried that he's being set up for failure because I don't think he asks for Elisha personally. He says, "I've heard that your God can heal me, and I want to be healed. I'm coming to you for healing." And the king's like, "I can't heal leprosy. What are you talking about?" And like, go away.
Right. Yeah. There's a whole thing about a letter. The king of Aram sent him with a letter along with 10 silver talents, 6,000 gold pieces, and 10 festal garments to bring to the king of Israel. And with this letter, I'm sending my servant Naaman to you so that you may cure him of leprosy. He gives this to the king, and the king says, "I can't cure you. This is a trick."
Right, like it's a trap.
Yeah,
you're setting me up so that when I fail to cure your servant, you will invade me.
Right,
because I failed to do the thing that you're
And
paying me to do.
Like, he's so upset he tears his garments. And when Elisha hears that the king of Israel had torn his garments, he said, "Why have you torn your garments? Let him come to me and I'll let him find out there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman comes and Elisha says, "All right, go wash 7 times in the Jordan and your flesh will heal and you'll be clean." And Naaman's mad. He's like, I could bathe in my country.
We have better rivers in Syria than you have in Israel.
Right. And so he's mad and leaves. And then one of the servants says, if the prophet had told you to do something extraordinary, go climb a mountain and slay, dragons, whatever, you would have oh, yes, that's what I must do. But he's just asking you to do something simple. So why not just try it? Just try it. And he is humble enough to do it and to admit that maybe he was a little precipitous. And so he went down to the Jordan 7 times and comes out clean. And goes back with his whole retinue to Elisha, and that's where our reading picks up, where he praises God. So it's this humility. I mean, he basically converts on the spot to this religion of this other country. That's a big deal for this general in his country. What will that do to his position? He's taking up the religion of the enemy land.
Yeah, but he was cured. So really good. And so you have these 2 foreigners who are the ones who praise God, and give him the glory for the blessings that they've received and being put in right relationship. So it was a good homily, good readings, and worthwhile. All right, let's take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Raising the Bets, including JJ, Matt S, Vicky R, Kimberly K, and Scott K. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Raising the Bets and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. You'll find links from our discussion in our show notes at sqpn.com/bets. That's BETTS. You can send your feedback to our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to bets@sqpn.com, or visit our StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. Follow Raising the Bets in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or at the StarQuest YouTube channel, where you should also make sure to hit the bell to get notifications. Until next time, I'm Dom Bettinelli. And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest. Here's another podcast on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy: The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/secrets.